Right, let's talk about something we mentioned earlier on in the programme. We were talking about mould. It's been in the news quite a bit recently, sadly for tragic reasons in many cases. Do you know what to do if you find something like mould or a leak in a property that isn't yours? Do you know your rights and your responsibilities? Likewise, what is a landlord responsible for? Well, Dawn Clarke is the lettings director from Nock Deighton, and she can give us an insight into the roles and responsibilities and joins us now. Dawn, good morning.
Good morning, Adam. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Dawn. Thanks for coming onto the programme. Could you just give us a brief description of what you do?
Yes, I'm the lettings director at Nock Deighton, so I oversee all of the lettings and property management teams that we have throughout all of our branches, and we currently manage over 750 rented properties.
So this recent story of mould in the news and the tragic consequences of a little 2-year-old boy losing his life, I mean, that must be a very real story to you when you read about that.
Absolutely, yes. It's such a tragic story, and yes, it was absolutely terrible. So, it was very, very interesting for us to sort of read about that and to hear the outcome. We have dealt with many issues over the years with mould in properties, condensation. So, yes, it did sort of hit us quite hard.
What would you expect a tenant to be responsible for?
A tenant is responsible for looking after the property, to keep the interior of the property in good repair and condition, except for those items that are the responsibility of the landlord. They're also responsible to take all adequate precautions to ensure that there is enough ventilation to the property, and also to notify the landlord of any repairs that are required. Now, those clauses are written into a standard tenancy agreement. So they are the general responsibilities of the tenant, but they must notify the landlord if there are any issues.
Are there things that are definitely the landlord's responsibility?
Yes, the landlord under various housing acts is responsible for the maintenance of the property itself, the structure, whatever they're providing within the property, the electrical installation, the gas, the plumbing, and what they're actually providing within there. The landlord is responsible for maintaining and keeping those in good repair.
Is this set in stone? Are there any grey areas?
Well, I think when it does come to items such as condensation, then we have to try and identify the difference, whether it's a structural problem initially or whether it's a lifestyle problem, because obviously there's a fine line between damp and condensation, and obviously mould comes from condensation. So it's difficult to sort of identify that. So whilst we're not experts at all, then I think if there is an issue, then we should really get an expert in there to identify whether it is an issue caused by the structure of the property or whether it is a lifestyle. I mean, with lifestyle issues, we breathe, we cook, we depending on how many people are in a property, it causes condensation, it causes water vapour, and if there are any areas, any sort of cold walls, that's when the condensation hits the walls.
Absolutely. No, I fully agree with what you're saying there. Of course, we all have ways of living in our own houses, don't we, or wherever we are. What advice would you offer a new tenant? Are there advice lines? Are there places that people can go for advice?
Yes. I mean, when a new tenant, under the current legislation, a new tenant should always be provided with a written tenancy agreement, but also a tenant should be provided with the government's How to Rent guide. And within that How to Rent guide, it identifies all the responsibilities of the tenants and also the responsibilities of a landlord. So that guidance is there to start with. I know with all of the properties that we let, as a matter of course, we always provide them at the beginning with a guide on how to prevent condensation in a property, because it really is a sort of fine line there, and it's all caused from the wrong mix or the incorrect mix of heat and ventilation. So a tenant should have that guidance to start with, but then if it does get worse, then they should report it to the landlord.
can you help a tenant with a landlord who isn't responding?
Yes, the tenant should always report something in writing so that they've got that evidence there. And if the landlord doesn't respond, then they can go to the local authority and report it to the environmental health officer. And the local authority are obliged to act upon that and respond. And
of course, we heard earlier from Andy, and who said about taking photos. Is that adding to your argument if you've got photographic proof as well?
Definitely, yes. That is the best way, really. When you're reporting something in writing to your landlord, it's always best to give the evidence and show the photographs. Because, if mould is untreated, it can spread. And then it can spread across the walls, but then it can also, if it gets worse, it's a living organism. So it can spread to then clothing and furniture and things like that. So it really does need to be addressed as soon as possible. But yes, photographs will always help.
Okay, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on The Breakfast Show, Dawn. Dawn Clarke, Lettings Director for Nock Deighton, talking about roles and responsibilities, not just for landlords, but also for tenants as well.